definitely part of the tradition.
Well, certainly the storytelling time often was regarded as between first frost and last frost. For one thing, the nights are very long, the days are short, and people are going to be inside much more. And the question of entertainment, but also of passing on useful knowledge, because a good story always does at least two things. It entertains and it teaches, and that teaching can be very subtle or very obvious. And when people traveled in the wintertime, often older men who were no longer hunting and who probably would not be able to do as much physical activity, people like myself who are in their ancient years and are sort of
you look in pretty good
along,
shape,
but would travel from lodge to lodge. This is among the Haudenosaunee, among the Iroquois, and among the Alnobak, the Abenaki too, and go each place they'd be welcomed, and they would be given a place to sit by the fire, they'd be given a bed for the night, they'd be given food, they might be given gifts as a result of their performance. And one tradition that was certainly practiced among the Haudenosaunee was for the storyteller to carry a little bag in which there were objects that were reminiscent of different stories. So you might simply hold out the bag and say, here, reach in and pull out whatever story you may find. And someone might reach in and pull out a braid of sweetgrass, and that would remind them, the story of Glooskonba and Segunk. And then that story would be told. Do you know that story, Jesse?
I don't. You could tell that one.
Want me to tell that one?
Sure.
Yeah, a long time ago, they say, and I'd go, ho.
Hey.
That makes sure our audience is still awake. All you out there, ho.
Hey.
Hey.
Good. I heard that person over there, someone asleep in that chair. But
That wasn't snoring. That was a hey. That was
yeah.
a hey.
Well, long ago, Glooskonba did many great things to help the people, and he traveled around with a friend of his who was called Segunk, or Skunk. And one day, the snow began to fall and did not stop falling. The people called out for help, for Glooskonba to come and help them. So Glooskonba made the long and difficult trip to this village of people where the snow kept falling, and Segunk came with him. And when he got there, he said, I think I know what has happened. It is that the snowbird has opened its wings and has not closed them. So I'll go visit the snowbird. So Glooskonba began to walk towards that high mountain on which the snowbird sat, and little Segunk followed behind him, jumping from one footprint to the next. It was not easy for him to do this. He was getting very wet and very cold, but he was very determined and followed Glooskonba to that mountaintop, where Glooskonba found the wind eagle standing with the snow pouring out from beneath its wide open wings. And Glooskonba said, you remember what I did to the wind eagle? I bound its wings. I can bind your wings too unless you close them and make the snow stop. And the snowbird said, oh, I understand, and closed its wings and the snow stopped. And then they turned and went back down the mountain. By the time they returned to the village, the snow had melted away. The people were rejoicing. They thanked Glooskonba. They gave him food. They totally ignored Segunk, totally ignored him. Now, on the way back to that village, they had passed another hill. A great bird stood on top of that mountain as well, with its wings wide open and light pouring from it. And Segunk had said, what is that? And Glooskonba said, oh, that is the day eagle. With its wings open, light spreads over the world. Well, Segunk was so upset that when the night came, he decided he would do something to make sure that people remembered him too, just as they remembered Glooskonba. So he crept up to that hilltop where the day eagle slept with its wings closed, and he took a tight cord and wrapped it around that day eagle and tied its wings, and then crept back and went to sleep. Well, the next morning, when the sun was supposed to rise, when the day was supposed to come, no day came. The people were afraid. What's happened? What's going on? Well, Glooskonba had an idea. He found his way to that mountaintop. He discovered the day eagle had been bound, and he managed to untie one wing, but not the other. It was so tightly tied. So to this day, there's always light just on one half of the world and not on the other, because the day eagle has to turn around on that mountaintop. And Glooskonba found up there the tracks of the person who had done that, the tracks of Segunk. He followed them back to where Segunk was pretending to sleep. He said, I know what you did. It was not a good thing. Now, in those days, Segunk had pure white fur. And Glooskonba took his pipe and dumped it out on top of Segunk, turning him black. Then he said, so you'll remember what you used to look like. I will do this. And he took his fingers and ran them down Segunk's back to make a long white stripe. And now Segunk was not only a different color, he was also very smelly from those ashes that were dumped all over him. Well, Segunk was so unhappy, he went into the nearest field and began to rub himself off on the grasses, trying to spread his scent on those grasses. But Glooskonba followed behind him and just blew his breath on those grasses, and those grasses became sweet. They became sweet grass. And to this day, Segunk has that bad smell, that black coat with a white straw on the back. And to this day, the sweet grass grows, its scent as sweet as the breath of Glooskonba.